Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Crypto News Podcast. We are buzzing as always, super pumped for this episode. This guy and his company are absolutely blowing up right now for good reason. Today we have Austin Federa on the show today, co-founder of DoubleZero, a dedicated high-performance network for modern distributed systems. And of course, he's also president of the DoubleZero Foundation. Prior to co-founding DoubleZero last year in 2024, he served as head of strategy at the one and only Solana Foundation. Ever heard of it? Where he was responsible for setting the direction of the foundation and working with projects and developers building across the Solana ecosystem. Before that, he worked on marketing and product at Bison Trails and was director of marketing at Republic and Republic Crypto, a private investing platform. Austin, super pumped, been wanting to have you on the show for a while. We finally got you on. Can't wait to get into it. How you doing this lovely morning?
Doing good. Thanks for having me on.
Pumped to have you. You were just in, of course, I always lurk everyone's Twitter before they come on. And again, you and I had to reschedule this, but you were just in Dubai for Token. I didn't make it this year. I was there last year. I thought it was great last year. Dubai is just a magical place in some regard, but also very dystopian and sort of Mars-like in other regards. It's a bit of a tough one, but how was Token? And what is your 2 cents on Dubai itself as a city as well? I always love when guests come on who are just in Dubai because I'm always so curious about what they think.
Yeah, so Token's always one of those conferences that's really hard. It is the thing about Token is there's a lot of people that show up and there's a lot of holders that show up, which is not the case for most crypto conferences. One of the great things about Singapore, Token 2049 Singapore, which I'd been doing many years, is that just the family offices that hold a bunch of tokens are there, users are there. And so you get a better sense, I think, of the market and where the market is than you get at most conferences. This is my first time going to the one in Dubai. So it was kind of good to see. I think the Singapore one is a little higher quality overall, just in terms of the attendee base and those sorts of things. But it was still a super useful conference. We got a ton of work done there, from getting new network contributors on board, from the bandwidth and fiber side of things, to meeting with a bunch of folks who work at layer 1s and layer 2s that are interested in learning about DoubleZero. And that's kind of the point of these conferences, is just you get everyone there, even if, Dubai is hotter than hell and it's basically in a giant Las Vegas casino type situation, even though it's not technically a casino, which is not my favorite conference experience, but these things are for work. And so they get their job done.
Yeah, well said there. Obviously, you're biased. You worked at Solana, and obviously DoubleZero is involved with Solana. I love Solana as well, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like no ecosystem has the buzz that Solana has right now. Did you feel that same way as well in Dubai and at Token, where it's just Solana was sort of the star of the show?
Yeah, some of this depends on what you consider an ecosystem, right? And this is what's hard, because what you see is if you squint, there's this whole world of things that is Ethereum, but it's actually very PvP, between Optimism and Arbitrum, between different L2s and different L2s. And so it feels much less like there's a cohesive Ethereum movement at the moment, simply because the L2 roadmap is one of fragmentation, and that's by design. That's not accidental, right?
Yeah.
And so on Solana, it's sort of you have people competing with one another, but they're competing for there's no moat between applications on Solana, right? If you're building on the OP stack versus you're building on the Arbitrum stack, there's inherent moats to it's hard for someone to just move from Optimism to Arbitrum or Arbitrum to Optimism. On Solana, it's Jupiter and Drift are just competing, right? Different Nev systems like Paladin and Jito are just in pure competition. And so you get a little bit more of camaraderie for the bigger things and a lot more, I would say, competition on the small things, which is kind of a nice dynamic where it's we're going to collaborate on SIMDs and improvement to the protocol. But then I'm going to completely try and steal all your customers on the user side of things. And I think that's a good dynamic. So
yeah,
there's definitely a lot of buzz for Solana at Token 2049 this year.
I love to hear that. And last thing on Dubai, which we didn't jump into, and then we'll jump into, of course, DoubleZero and more Solana stuff and your Twitter, which is fire. Dubai as a whole, how do you explain Dubai to people who haven't been? I've been a few times, and when my friends ask me, I'm always and perhaps this is just a nonsensical, terrible explanation on my end, but I always say it's as if we colonize Mars. Everything works really, really well. At least that's what I found. You can get anything you want, at your fingertip. You can pay in crypto, you can pay in fiat. It's very safe. This is probably the safest place I've ever been. I mean, I live in Toronto. I would never leave my phone or laptop unattended. And, I went for like a 30-minute swim in Dubai and just left my laptop on like a beach chair. No one even thought of stealing that. Here, this would be gone in a heartbeat. But like, how do you explain Dubai to friends and family?
So Dubai is not like there's a lot of good things that can. I feel like Dubai and Singapore are like kind of similar structurally, as are sort of like Macau in the same area. Like there's a lot of these areas that are low tax,
Mm.
fairly authoritarian, and they sort of thrive on a certain level of wealth and exclusivity. And I think like you can there's a lot of places that sort of like Montenegro can kind of fall into that same category. The challenges with all of them are a lot of people don't like permanently live there, right? Like
Yeah.
tax havens attract a certain type of person. And the thing that has, I think, done more good for Dubai than anything else in the recent years, especially in the crypto scene, is quite frankly the war in Ukraine, because you have all of these developers who were in Ukraine or in Russia and just left when the violence started and the invasion started. And Dubai was one place that really opened doors to people and said, "Hey, like come here," right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
for years, Dubai didn't really have any builder culture. It really just had an investor and a tax haven culture. And this is my first time in Dubai, but what you can see is there's actually like for the first time there's kind of builders there. And that is like a big change, the same way that like Singapore for a while, it had a lot of finance, but didn't have a lot of builders there. Then it had a bunch more builders come to it. So I think we'll kind of see what the future holds for it. I still see Dubai as something that like needs to invest much more in infrastructure if it wants to compete with Singapore. Like you say things like work really well. It's like, well, like last year there was a giant
The
flood
flood. That was
and
insane.
like
That was
there's things that
wild.
are just missing, like natural gas pipelines or oil
Yeah.
pipelines,
Yeah.
right? And so like I had coworkers from my old company that were stuck in hotels that ran out of air conditioning because apparently they
Wow.
don't get most of their electricity from the grid. They get it from like oil trucks that deliver it to the hotels. And like there's just a lot of things like that where like
Gotcha.
I live in New York. I think the taxes are too high, but like maybe 5% also isn't enough to build a modern city. There's also a lot of weird externalities that come with this. So like one of the weird things is like private internet infrastructure, which is particularly notable to us and DoubleZero, is about 10 times as expensive in Dubai as it is in other regions of the world. And that's because
Interesting.
the government has very, very high taxes on things that businesses use, even if those taxes are very low on the things that individuals use. And so there's sort of this like, oh wow, like everything's just 5% tax. And it's like that's not really true, right? Governments still need revenue and they still need revenue from areas. You get a lot more government intrusion into private marketplaces, right? Like the telecoms are all owned by the government, the data centers are owned by the government, the airlines owned by the government. Like there's trade-offs in all of these systems. And so I think there's a lot of really cool stuff that the UAE and Dubai is doing. I get a little frustrated with people that are like, oh my God, they're doing everything right. Because it's like the power of the United States is that the executive branch tried to kill Coinbase and Coinbase won in court.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
executive branch tried to kill Ripple and Ripple won in court. And that would not happen in Korea. That would not happen in Singapore. That would definitely not happen in Dubai. That would,
Well said.
right? And so like I kind of have these whole like US versus like anywhere else or anywhere else versus the US things. It's always much more subtle than anything you can really boil down to like this city does it well or this country does it well. It's really about like what do you care about in a society? And if you're optimizing for low taxes and like high availability of services, Dubai, Singapore are an incredible place. If you're optimizing for different things, you may end up with Switzerland or the United States or like even, the Netherlands or something like that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Great riff on that. For me, and I love everything you said there. It's also the feel. It just feels a little weird to me. I loved it. I thought, and I'm not someone like I wear, Uniqlo t-shirts and Lululemon. That's like my Mark Zuckerberg or Steve Jobs wardrobe kind of thing. But it's just the level of wealth, everyone wearing designer, like everyone's stunting. I don't know. It's just a little weird how like high class everything is. It's sort of weird there, but I do like it, and
Yeah,
and
but
it was
Miami
good.
is the same.
No, it's yeah, 100%. Great way to start the show. I mean, let's talk about the Solana patch. That was wild. I think that happened. It was either last weekend or late last week. I don't know why people shat on this. Like, isn't this the whole like? Isn't this why we want to do crypto and
Uh,
why we want decentralization with a bit of
okay,
centralization? Like, why the hell did everyone shit on this? This made no sense to me.
People attack this because Solana actually does it in public. Bitcoin Core has had emergency patches, right? Like Ethereum has had emergency patches too. I think the thing about Solana is there's this real, it's kind of hard to explain, but like the optics don't matter. It's all like engineer driven, right? And like I think people like will, there's gonna be some knee-jerk reaction. What do you mean Solana doesn't care about optics? Like they put all this money into like, super teams and marketing. It's like, yes, that's true, but like that's not the engineering team, right? Like the folks who work on the validator clients, the folks at
Yeah.
Agave, the folks, or is it at Anza who work on Agave, the Firedancer team, the Jito team, like these folks really are not that focused on optics to the extent where like engineers will sort of shout you down if you're like, no, we're not going to talk about that way. That's just dumb. We're going to do it the way we're supposed to do it because what they care about is like the core engineering product.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's really easy to dunk on folks for putting out patches to 0-day systems that are like not public. But like I've been through a few of these at Solana, right? I wasn't involved in this one, so I don't work for the foundation anymore. But the way it's done is always like pretty responsible. You put a public hash out that many people can confirm that this patch that's getting distributed is indeed legit. And then you actually release that to the public after the fact, that exact code change. And so anyone can go in and they can check and they can see what was in this sort of like private patch that rolled out. But the thing here is like a lot of the people who are complaining about this stuff, like I think he's got Hudson on Twitter, who's like, an OG Ethereum person being like, these critiques are dumb. Like Bitcoin does this, Solana does this, Ethereum does this. Like this is the way you do this stuff. People who are like, oh, they should have done it in public first. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, do you think these attackers are idiots? Like, say what you will about North Korea. They've got some very good software engineering.
Yeah.
So if you put out these patches, they're like, oh, just please don't exploit it. Like, it'll be fine. Everyone just upgrade. Like, that doesn't work. That's like an insane request. That's sort of like, it'd be the equivalent of the military would be like, what if you just send everyone a text message like before, you bomb the terrorists? Like, it doesn't work.
Exactly.
You need to do these things with a certain level of security. And at the end of the day, like the ability to coordinate a patch like this does not mean that something is centralized. In fact, it kind of means the opposite, right? If we could just ship a binary and people would blindly install it on, in a new software upgrade, that would be a huge map of centralization. It's not the Solana Foundation that's demanding that people put out these hashes in public on Twitter to prove that the patch is legit. It's the validator operators that are like, I don't know, maybe Trent's account got hacked. Maybe Anza's trying to do something shady. Like, we need multiple points of confirmation that this thing is actually legitimate before we just upgrade it. There's a whole bunch of folks at Jito and at the Firedancer team also that took the Anza patches and were like, cool, thanks for giving us this. We're going to go spend some time reverse engineering it and making sure there's nothing weird going on in this thing. So, it's one of those things where I think a lot of people who have never built anything are very fast to judge how things work on Twitter. But the other piece too is like a bunch of these are just like paid FUD accounts, right? Like there are many people out there who have a vested interest in a particular protocol failing, and this is not like Solana specific, but because Solana is a big protocol, it is now an attack from a bunch of this stuff. Like, back when I used to run like strategy and comms at Solana, like I would catch folks who would tell me that, hey, this one of your competitors actually paid us to run a bot farm against you. And it's like,
come on,
100%.
Legit?
100%. I mean,
Wow.
there were competitors that paid law firms to file class action suits against Solana. Like it's not like at the end of the day, everyone's a capitalist, right? And so there's no reason to expect that like crypto, just because it's permissionless and decentralized, is going to have like nicer people than the corporate world, which is full of espionage and like planted stories about various competitors and,
Same motive.
Yeah.
Same motive at the end of the day. Everyone wants to make a bag.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, there's this sort of thing where I used to think that the traditional markets were going, or crypto was going to mature to look more like traditional markets. And the opposite happened, right? The traditional markets have now devolved to look much more like crypto, right? The politics of 2025 look much closer to the politics of Twitter in 2022. And so this is just, this is the way that things are going at the moment. And there's no reason to expect crypto is going to be any better or any worse than anything else in society around this stuff.
Very well said. I was just, again, I was doing my usual, spending way too much time on Twitter, probably same as you. And literally I was just like, pardon my French, but like, what the F is going on? Like, what a world we live in. How could this be perceived as a bad thing? But again, it's just like, every day. I mean, Twitter, I say this to my friends many times, Austin. If you lock me in a room and we're like, hey, honestly, even if it was a fast and you just gave me water for a week and you're like, you only have an internet connection, every other website is blocked, all you have is X for a week straight, I'd probably be okay. Like I could probably amuse myself literally for a week straight, 16 hours a day on X and the other 8 sleep. But anyways, speaking of X, your Twitter's fire. You had one recently and you didn't give us much. It was a bit of a tease. You sort of dangled the carrot right in front of us, but didn't tell us what it meant. Someone tweeted, "What is your most contrarian take?" And it sort of blew up. And your tweet was, "We're on a good track." And that was it. You didn't give us anything else. You just dangled us and gave us nothing. Why do you think we're on a good track right now with all the shit show that's happening, with the macro stuff that's happening? Why are we on a good track right now?
I think it's really easy to be pessimistic about the state of anything at the moment. But pessimism is easy, right? Like the default state of like the world is getting worse has been something people have said for thousands of years. And with a few exceptions, it's usually not true. Like if you could rewind history and choose yourself to be born,
Oh, that
right?
take that people say, like, I'd rather, like, you are so out to lunch. We can get everything we want, right? Like,
Sure,
yeah,
but
I agree
even
with you
like
there.
even go back to like 1990, right? You still got antibiotics, you still got electricity, you still got like was the economy better then? Like not really, not for most people. Was society better? No, not really, not for most people. And as you get into this stuff, I think it's very hard to look at like you can view a world now and you can say like, oh man, everything's falling apart. We've got India and Pakistan about to go to war. We've got
Yeah.
Ukraine, we've got Russia, we've got China, we've got Taiwan, we've got macroeconomic troubles. And then you're like, yeah, but like remember the 80s when we almost nuked all of ourselves out of existence? And we had 17% inflation,
Yeah.
and we had, and you can go through all of these types of things, and it's very hard to look around and not say that we're making a ton of progress. Now, the thing that we're not necessarily, we're more connected to the problems than we've ever been before, but that's more about what people choose to pay attention to and the way that like the accessibility of suffering is higher than it's ever been. And some
Mm.
people view that as the world
Mm.
is worse than it's ever been, but really what it is just like we're maybe more aware. But like you look at
Yeah.
global poverty and like we have done an incredible job eliminating poverty in the world. Like just in my lifetime, the number of people who are living on a global poverty threshold has gone down like astronomically. And so we're kind of at this precipice where we see a lot of disruption happening, right? Every time there's a new communications medium that arises, it takes society like 20 years to really handle it. This happened with radio, this happened with
Yeah.
television, this happened with the
Yeah.
printing press far enough back in the day. This is happening with social media now. We're going to go through another version of this with AI soon. But all of these things I think are leading us to something that is like a better world to live in than we are today. Like you can look at this and in one way you can say like, oh my God, look at what's happening with the Trump administration. Like if you're on the left, you can say all this disastrous like stuff that's taking place. Then you can look around and you're like, well, they made it easier to build nuclear. Like we got the IRA passed under Biden, and like that's not getting unwound. Like for all of the the trade war tariff stuff, I think has been really bungled in terms of the rollout. And there's a lot of people who are like defenders of the administration who look very silly right now
Yeah.
because there are lots of problems with this. Like what we're dealing with are like fundamentally not major issues over the long term, right? You can take the tariffs off if they don't work. You can renegotiate things if they're not working. Like there's always this feeling that and this is true in politics, right? That like your enemies are geniuses and your allies are morons. And it's usually never the case, right? People in China are just as concerned about this trade war as people in the US are. Like
Yeah.
you get to a place very quickly where like I just think that we're actually headed in a pretty good direction, all things concerned. And there's problems, there's always problems. We'll hopefully get through them. Like I don't see us on the precipice of a third world war or something like that.
No, no. This is the best. I mean, it's just an incredible time to be alive. I completely agree with you. The only thing that scares me, and if we get into this, we're not going to have time to discuss DoubleZero, so we'll save this for round two. But for me, it's the AI and UBI thing where it's like, again, I'm not this doomsday person where I think AI is going to steal everyone's job. But I just look at like even how and I'm no AI expert by any means, but how I've integrated AI into my workflows and how much time I've saved. And then I think of my friends who are, maybe I won't say friends, but within the network who are Excel monkeys at the biggest banks in Canada. And it's like, how do these guys have a job? Like all the admin, anyways, a story for another day. But that's the only thing for me
I mean,
where
look,
I'm like,
I think the thing people are mid-curving when they come to AI is that it doesn't solve the responsibility problem. At the end of the day, most companies still want someone to sue, and it's not
yeah,
going to be OpenAI.
yeah,
And so there's a lot of human jobs that are going to keep existing with this stuff. I also think we've been through this. Went through this with the Industrial Revolution, and like, yeah, it caused a lot of migration around the world, and that was not like all bad, right? Like I think
yeah,
there's this thing too where we're very, I don't know when we got so fearful as like a culture and a society, as opposed to thinking like we're fundamentally smart people that can figure this out.
yeah. So you're not, and we'll spend 2 minutes on this and we'll move on, but you're not under the impression that like shit's gonna get spooky and that a lot of jobs are gonna be toast. You think it's all gonna be cool? It's gonna be Gucci. It's gonna be fine.
No, I think a lot of jobs are going to be toast, but I think that's not new. Like that's not
Yeah,
unprecedented before. We've been through a lot of versions of this before. We went through the version of this with automation in the 90s and like people, like there's a lot of people who are like, "Oh, this killed small town America." And it's like it didn't really kill small town America. The factory going away isn't what killed this place. The delta between economic opportunity
yeah,
available in
100%.
highly competitive economies and non-competitive economies is what killed small town America. The factory going away was just a symptom of that, right? And there's actually a world where you could stitch a theory together about how like more AI existing and more systems that actually put higher value on different types of work because the delta between what is information work and what is like different types of work gets larger. And right, you could see a world where like we go back to spending more money
Yeah,
on food, but our food quality is much higher because
yeah,
now we have a ton of people who are like, I want to say farming again, right? But like there's all these types of things you can put together about how this is actually like between Starlink and a bunch of other technologies, you can revitalize small towns through like
more
more
di- more
advanced
dis-
technology
more
systems.
distributed. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think it's
totally.
gonna, and the rise of like the micro agency per se, where it's like a lot of people will now be able to do all of the different types of knowledge work, but where before you needed to hire multiple agencies. I feel like a lot of people are gonna, be their own businesses and fix and provide a lot of solutions to multiple different problems. Where now it's like more larger centralized entities are the ones that provide those solutions to problems, where a couple of years down the road, it'll just be people like you and I who can provide a shitload of
Yeah.
solutions to a shitload of problems.
Also, like talk about scaling social services at near zero cost. Like we do a
Yes.
very poor job with mental health in this country.
Yeah.
And like there's sort of you can look at this as a bit of a dystopian future, but if you're able to just give like people who are mentally unwell a phone with a chat GPT
Yes.
like therapist on it, like you
Oh,
can say like, oh, that's so dystopian. We should be helping. We're not helping people right now. We're just moving them off one part of the street to another and pretending we're giving them housing at $60,000 a month, right? Like social
yeah.
services are incredibly expensive to administer because it's all one-to-one right now, right? Childcare is expensive, not because there's some extortion ring on childcare. It's that it's like a 1 to 5 person business. You can't have one person take care of 30 toddlers.
Yeah.
Like that's just not going to
Yeah.
work, right? But like there's a lot of these social systems where we can start to scale them through the use of technology and we can actually make a better experience for pretty much everyone involved in the stack. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm hopeful.
Well said. Okay, what a start to the show. Quick break, and then we're going to take a deep dive into DoubleZero here. Huge shout out to Prime XBT, longtime friends and longtime sponsors of the Crypto News Pod. We love Prime XBT and the team as they offer a robust trading system for both beginners and professional traders. It doesn't matter if you're a rookie or a vet, you can easily design and customize your layouts and widgets to best fit your trading style. Prime XBT is also running an exclusive promo for listeners of the Crypto News Podcast. Use the promo code CryptoNews50, that's CryptoNews50, all one word, to receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. Again, that's CryptoNews50, all one word, to receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. Now back to the show with Austin. All right, what a start to the show. Time to get into DoubleZero. Let's jump right into it. Sure, a lot of people are wondering, all right, dude, you had a sweet job, you had a sweet gig, you literally worked for the Solana Foundation, marketing comms, whole 9 yards, you did it all, you were well known. Why start DoubleZero? And just a little precursor to that, tell me about the name. I love the name. I love the token. Like, what was behind the name DoubleZero, and why did you want to start this bad boy?
Yeah, I mean, DoubleZero it's one of those like classic, like, oh, this was a code name for a project that ends up becoming just the name type of situations. And so DoubleZero is comes out of this two-ring architecture of an inner ring and an outer ring with this filtration and protection layer in between, and that forms two zeros. And also like the sort of ASCII symbol for soul is those two circles.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
the whole thing just seemed like kind of beautiful and we went through a whole bunch of branding exercise around like, do we rename the thing? Do we create a new logo? Because like the logo kind of came out of the same sort of YOLO nature that we started this thing with, which was like we'd spent so much time building the product and we spent so much time on the white paper that we were going to launch the Twitter account. We were like, oh, we don't have a logo. And that's fine for 99% of the stuff you're doing, but you can't launch a Twitter account without a logo.
Yeah.
And so I just sort of like threw in the old Netscape Navigator broken JPEG thing as like, oh, this'll be good. This is like everything wrong with the old internet and what we're trying to rebuild. And it just kind of stuck. It felt like it was, oh, this speaks to something honest about like the modern typeface and then the retro logo. Like it's jarring, not everyone likes it, but that's kind of where we went with the whole design of the thing too.
One quick thing, and sorry to interrupt. The first time I came across it, I was like, did these guys mess this up on purpose? It was almost like, when someone on Twitter types with a typo, and I'm always, okay, this person is so smart and obviously very literate. Like, did they do this on purpose so you double take? You know what I mean by that? I was like, did these guys
Totally.
make it like pixely and messy to mess with you? But it is, and I double took, and here we are. So anyways, continue.
Yeah, well, if you see a typo for me on Twitter, it's entirely just a typo. But
Some
the
people
logo
do
was
it on
interesting.
purpose though. Some people do
Yes.
do typos on purpose, which is wild.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, I spent 4 years on the Solana project, which was an incredible place to work. It's an incredible collection of people who work there, very dedicated to the future and the protocol and the vision. And one of the nice things about the folks who work on the Solana protocol is they tend to be very practical, production-focused engineers. They're
Mm.
not kind of like pie in the sky, like how could we theoretically build this thing? It's very much focused on like what do we ship that like increases performance. And so this is where the increased bandwidth, reduced latency sort of meme comes from. It's like that is the gold star. Like, can we do both of these things while maintaining decentralization? If the answer is yes, ship it. Right? If the answer is no, don't ship it. And so, there is like I could have stayed at Solana Foundation for a bunch more years and just continued working there, but like I think there's a bit of clock on becoming a founder. Like I think you have that you age out of that, I think. And I had the desire to do it, and this was like an area that felt like there was a lot of need, not just on Solana, because I didn't want to go build something just on Solana. I didn't want to go build something competitive with Solana. And so it was sort of like, can we tackle a new area of infrastructure that no one in crypto is even thinking of, but everyone in TradFi thinks of, right? Like this is how high frequency trading firms work. Almost every financial company in the world uses private dedicated networking. So what would it take to bring that to crypto and really allow these validator clients that from a software standpoint, they can do 1 million transactions per second, but they can't do anywhere near that on the public internet. You can go through every network out there, look at the benchmarks that they release before they go to
And
mainnet,
that's
look at how
wild.
fast the testnet is, and then look at mainnet being a tenth as fast, right? And it's because the public internet is not built for this. Mainnet transactions are very different than testnet transactions. The load is different, all these types of things. But at the end of the day, what it really comes down to is the public internet is not performant enough for the needs of high performance distributed systems.
So that was literally it. It was just like the sort of the broader macro thinking of like, we need a better internet, and DoubleZero is going to enable that.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like I've always been a big believer of if you set out to make money, you're probably not going to make money. And if you set out
Yeah.
to build something useful and interesting, it'll probably go pretty well for you financially. And this was very much the case with me joining Solana, right? I'd love to say I was clairvoyant, and when I joined at $1.25, I saw that it would be $150 a few years later. And the truth is, no, this is just an incredibly interesting problem set, and I thought I had a ton I could learn from Anatoly and Raj.
Yep.
And, it turned out to be an incredible decision to join the protocol, but like it was not economically driven. I think the same thing is very much true with something like DoubleZero. A lot of founders set out and say either I want to be a founder, like I want the aesthetic of being a founder, or like I want to be rich. And I think those are two really great reasons not to found a company.
Interesting point. Very okay. I like that. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. The founder as a lifestyle business is like far too prevalent in crypto. And you either end up doing one of two things. You either end up scamming a bunch of people.
Yeah.
Sometimes unintentionally, like we've had some pretty high profile, like not rugs, not
Yeah, I know what you mean.
necessarily illegal, but stuff that just was like very bad decisions. And usually in my personal view, usually that is not driven by malice, that is driven by someone trying to sort of like, it's like the old Roadrunner and Coyote, like they've run off the cliff and they're just trying to keep pedaling. Like, I don't think FTX set out to be a scam. I think it became that because they had no other, like they were past the point of recovery at some point.
Yeah.
I think there's a few other projects that we've seen about in the sort of the recent months that maybe fall into that same category of like, at some point people just get too far down a decision they never should have made, and there's no way out. And so that's kind of what's
past the point of no return.
Yeah, that's something I always like look for in founders. Is like one of the best litmus checks I think you can say that is someone like a good founder is, are they more worried about the project's reputation or their own?
Yeah.
Right? Or are they putting off technical decisions for the sake of reputation is another one where like, totally like to his credit, like there's never been a moment where he's sort of said, oh, we shouldn't do the right thing because it will look bad.
Yeah.
Right. It's always been like, okay, we need to do the thing. And like,
this is what we need to do. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, like you can always talk him out of doing dumb stuff for the most part. I mean, I don't know. He launched a phone, but apart from that, you can talk him out of a lot of stuff. And because it's always honest discourse, like that's one of the real things I respect a ton about Solana is like, it's not manufacturing a narrative factory. I think a lot of other people, they try and manufacture a narrative factory because they've sort of bought into this, like fake it till you make it.
That's such a good line. Manufacturing narrative factories. It is true. Narratives are everything in crypto. People raise 8 figures on narratives. It literally seems every day we have a new narrative comes out and they raise 8 fakes. So I want to just perhaps for the non-technical crypto folks listening to the pod, and there is a chunk of the listeners and viewership who do fit in that bucket. But right now, let's use Solana for an example, as you work for them and we both know Solana very well. If some crazy viral consumer, killer app went on Solana right now and hundreds of millions of people joined crypto and more specifically joined Solana, would it work right now? Probably not. And that is the reason why you and the team created DoubleZero, because we need this internet that can bring Web 2 to Web 3. And again, like the people who don't think that we're becoming more digital versed every day, they're just out to lunch. Like I won't tell people they're wrong often, but you're just 100% wrong. Like look at the world. It's just becoming more and more online every single day. What would happen if sort of that consumer app was launched? And of course, there's no chance that 100 million people would come online in a week, but like, is that sort of the reason why you guys did this? For when that happens, there will be a solution to that problem?
So it really depends on the number of transactions. Like 100 million people coming online could be 100 million transactions per day, which is like a number Solana can handle, right? Now, if 100 million people coming online is each one of them is doing 1,000 transactions per day. Okay, well then that's when we start running into issues, right? And so this is kind of this is the thing, right? Like Farcaster is not actually built on chain, right? So it's like every interaction you do on Farcaster is not actually on chain. They're just like, there's some routes they write occasionally to Ethereum. And that's like, okay, cool. Well, something like that easily, like even a slow network like Ethereum could support it because it's not actually on chain.
Gotcha.
You compare that to something like Pump.Fun, which is like not everyone's favorite application, but it's got like something like 20 employees and it did $500 million in revenue last year,
Insane.
which is better than any AI company out there on a revenue per, like pretty much the only company that beats that is Tether. And that's only because they get
Yeah.
treasury yields, right? In terms of like revenue per employee, like Instagram is only 1.4 million in revenue per employee per year. And they're like the most successful company from a revenue per employee perspective. So like there's a lot of, and like, Pump.Fun did huge amounts of volume last year. There was 500,000 new tokens being created on it just in a month. Like it's totally wild, right? And set aside what you think of like Pump.Fun for a minute, like it shows that you can do pretty insane capacity on Solana for certain types of things. Now, the goal of like DoubleZero though is that we should get from that 5,000 to 7,000 transactions per second to a 500 to 700,000 transactions per second era. And we're going to do that not by shrinking the validator set, not by going to committees or any of these sort of tricks that basically reduce the amount of actors involved in any given moment. We're going to do this by massively scaling the bandwidth and throughput capacities of these types of networks and bringing connectivity that doesn't, when you're routing over the public internet, your data goes all over the place, right? If you're trying to talk from New York to Los Angeles, you'll bounce through Philadelphia, you might go to Chicago, your data might go to Dallas and Denver, and who knows, like it may go up through Seattle and then go back down. It's very indirect routing. And all of that is totally fine for, iMessages and Telegram chats and like Instagram videos. It's a real problem for high performance networks. I mean, like look at the amount of money that Zoom spends every year on just like traffic routing and bandwidth. And that's just video calls, right? That's because they're trying to make sure the video call experience is good. This is something that crypto really hasn't dealt with yet. And if we can deal with it, we're going to basically accelerate the scaling of all of these high performance networks by a decade or more. And so if DoubleZero is doing its job correctly, in a few years, we have multiple chains going over 100,000 transactions per second that also have large validator sets that are not just single sequencer chains.
Yeah. I mean, validators, and we are getting a little tight for time here, Austin, you're on a roll, but just talk about the importance of validators. I know you had a huge play in just sort of, not the marketing, but like when you think of validators, no one does a better job of marketing the importance of validators than the Solana Foundation. And then moving forward, you and the team at DoubleZero again, like the token raise was done via sort of validators. If you were a legit validator on Solana, on Sui, and the other chains as well, you got access to the DoubleZero token. But it's like the importance of validators is absolutely huge. It's the power that keeps the lights on. It keeps the network buzzing. Like, why are validators so important?
Yeah, I mean, without validators, you have pretty centralized systems, right? And so, there's a lot of interesting stuff happening in the L2 landscape, but those are all single teams running sole sequencers today. And even in the validator space, there are networks where you really can't run a validator without talking to the team. Polygon, for years is a great example of this. There's only 100 validators because that's the number of signatures you can fit in an Ethereum block. There's a lot of those types of things, but you really need to know someone there to run a validator. And so permissionless validation is really like key to keeping these systems actually robust and decentralized. Solana does a great job with this. Ethereum does a great job with this. Bitcoin is kind of the gold standard for this, where you don't even need a Bitcoin to like participate in Bitcoin. This is the beauty of proof of work systems.
Yeah.
And so what we were really trying to do is set this up in a way that validators are like the second most important operator on the network. The most important network operators for DoubleZero are the people providing the fiber. The second most important one are the validators and RPCs that are actually deploying infrastructure on the DoubleZero network.
Yeah, well said there. Again, I've just wished you had so much more time. We barely scratched the surface here. Any news, anything popping off at DoubleZero over the next couple of days, weeks, months that you can let us know before we let you go?
Yeah, I mean, we just did a testnet update this week, which brings a bunch of new features to the testnet. We've got about 30 Solana validators on mainnet and testnet operating on the DoubleZero network today. And then we are going to be in mainnet for this thing before the end of the year.
Love it. What an epi, Austin. Really appreciate you coming on again. Barely scratched the surface. Would love to have you on for round 2. And hopefully I can meet you next week in my beautiful city of Toronto, and hope you like it as well. I mean, everyone says It's like little New York. I'm not sure if you've been here before. And it has nothing on New York. New York is probably my favorite city in the world, but Toronto's pretty sweet as well, minus the problems we've had over the last couple of years. But story for another day. Before we let you go, can you please let our listeners know where they can find you personally and, of course, DoubleZero online and on socials?
Yeah, DoubleZero is the Twitter account. So you can go find us there. DoubleZero.xyz has all the project info. You can sign up to run a validator on testnet. You can also contribute fiber if you happen to have that lying around. And I'm on Twitter at Austin_Federa.
Folks, what an episode with Austin Federa, co-founder of DoubleZero and president of DoubleZero Foundation. Wow, this is one of those ones where having, just under an hour really sucks. We could have done a Joe Rogan 3-hour pod here. Huge shout out to Austin and the team for making this happen. If you guys enjoyed this one, I hope you did. Please do subscribe. It would mean the world to my team and I. Speaking of the team, love you guys. Thank you so much for everything. And back to the listeners, keep on growing those bags and keep on staying happy, wealthy, and healthy. Love you guys, and we'll see you on the next one. Ciao.